Now, let's get into introducing our speaker for today. Cherie Clonan is the founder and CEO of The Digital Picnic and a proud autistic woman. She is well known for her progressive approach to leading her team in a human-centric, neuroinclusive way. We are really excited to hear from you today, Cherie. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to be here. All right, I'm going to get ready to share my screen. Won't be a moment, everyone. So it's really lovely to be here. And again, thank you so much for a warm introduction. And I love having or leaning into conversations like the one that we're going to have this afternoon. I guess it's just representation seriously matters, and it's mattering more and more. Having grown up, childhood to now, I don't think I've ever seen as much representation in my little pocket of this world that I find myself in, and I'm just finding so much comfort in that representation. And it's so important to me, and it's so important to my family as well. So I thought I could come here and contribute to this afternoon's conversation, talking about my journey from what I describe as school can't. So some refer to it as school refusal. I actually think that school can't is more honest. I really did want to go to school. I just couldn't, so there wasn't really a refusal piece there for me. It was just a lot of barriers to sort of my success within the mainstream school setting that prevented me from, sticking out a big stint within the mainstream setting. And now, as it was just mentioned, I'm a really proud autistic woman and the CEO at the Digital Picnic. So as I said, I got promoted to CEO at the beginning of 2023. It was a really proud promotion to receive, and I'm committed to doing really good things with it. I was raised by a single parent autistic dad who always taught me, if money comes into your hands, you have to do good things with it. And that's what I'm really committed to doing. So when I hopped into, especially buying out a business partner within this business, 2018, wasn't in a great spot, the business. We had about $4,000 in the bank account and a $20,000 pay run to run in a week and a half. Yikes. But we made it happen. I think we had $10 left on that first pay run, and we just kept growing and doing better and innovating. And we have a really largely neurodivergent workforce, and we lean into an array of different neurodivergent strengths. And now I'm really proud to say we've become a multi-million-dollar company in the space of 4 to 5 years. And I'm really proud of that. And the best thing, coming back to that, a recommendation from my dad, we do really good things with the money that comes through our hands. We passionately believe in social media for social good. And I'll talk to that more, today. So a little bit about me. I'm an autistic woman. I guess my brand of autism is that I'm a PDA autistic woman. So that can stand for two things, depending on what you feel better represents you. Some describe PDA as a pathological demand avoidance, and others think that what feels more honest to them is a persistent drive for autonomy. To be really honest, I actually find both of those to be really honest descriptions about me. I am pathologically demand avoidant, and I'm really hyper autonomous, as my husband would probably describe. I have a really intense special interest in people. I have since I was honestly the youngest child. And I think that's one of my favorite things about me, if I'm being really honest. I don't love small talk. If you find me at a party, I'm in the corner just hiding from small talk. I really dislike it. I'm not really good at it. I don't really care about the weather or how you slept last night, or I'm not sure. I can't even think of other examples, to be really honest. I like to go deep. And so typical introvert, I'm not a big fan of small talk, and I go for, big conversations. I don't love eye contact, to be really honest. I did learn through growing up as a female autistic, like an autistic woman, growing up, you learn to mask, unfortunately. And so I learned that if I focus on like a little freckle or a pimple above someone's eyebrow, that counts to them as masking. Sorry, as eye contact. And for me, it does sometimes feel like masking. But yeah, not a big fan of eye contact. I'm a passionate lifelong learner. I always have been and I always will be. But as I said at the start of this, I really disliked school. I'm now raising two autistic children, so I have become fluent in disability discrimination within the school settings. And yeah, I advocate wherever needed, whenever needed, without apology. So I guess we were so beautifully welcomed before, and I'll just acknowledge I always love paying my respect to the fact that I'll be teaching from Aboriginal land and you will be learning from Aboriginal land. So where does my lived experience come from? I mentioned just a little bit before. I was raised by a single parent autistic dad. He is my best friend. Honestly, I am so lucky to have been raised by that man. He did everything that I would wish upon every neurodivergent child for me growing up. So ours was a home that was perfect for me in terms of just how it was designed. It was every accommodation you could ever hope for. It was a really low demand household. My dad is also PDA autistic, so our nervous system doesn't do well with a plethora of demands. So I had a really low demand upbringing. At some points, my dad homeschooled me when the school can't, turned into literally, I will not show up, and so I was really lucky to be homeschooled in an era, of time where it probably wasn't as, common as it is these days, especially after the pandemic and so on. And so I guess if you want to understand the woman that's standing in front of you today, it's important to know the kid that was before her. I'm really lucky. I had a great childhood with a really safe and inclusive parent. And you'll probably feel that come throughout tonight's, to this afternoon / tonight's webinar. And it's now how I show up in life. When you've been raised by someone like my dad who modeled leadership so well, I hope now that I'm the same kind of safe person for my team. I manage a team of human beings, as I said, a largely neurodivergent workforce. And I take the same lessons that were given to me from my dad to hopefully model so much safety to all of them as well. I guess the industry that I'm in, I'll talk to that a little bit more soon, but I specialize in content, digital marketing, content, paid advertising, and so on. And to be really honest with you, I've always seen life in content, and now I work in it. I feel really lucky. I guess for me, growing up, I always saw life in content, and that's how I knew I was different. When I would ask my friends, hey, when you watch scenes play out in front of you, how is it for you? Because for me, it would be a full cinematic experience, like music would play. I would write copy in my head. I would be screenwriting the next script for this cinematic masterpiece that I believed was happening in front of me when all it really was two kids playing on monkey bars in a school playground. But everything to me was content. And it was exhausting and beautiful all at the same time. And so now I work in an industry that leans into all of what I believe are my neurodivergent strengths. And to me, that's a representation of autistic well-being, to have found a job that literally ties into my special interests and my passions and my neurodivergent strengths. It just lights me up from the inside. So it's not about just lived experience tonight. Outside of, the obvious being lived experience, I'm also formally studying just for interest more than anything else, neurodivergent culture and identity. So I actually am, I'm studying through a group in Ireland. I just found them to be so incredibly neuroaffirming. And I wanted to get around that study. So I've been doing that for 2 years, and I absolutely love it. I've also completed formalized studies on RSD, so rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is really common within that neurodivergent umbrella, and it was something that always interested me, and I really wanted to understand more about it. I also designed a policy this year, which I thought was an Australian first, but I've learned as of 2 weeks ago that it's a world first, so I'm really proud. And that is that our company, which is humble, 17 employees, but we designed a policy that now pays the full cost of any neurodivergent related formal assessment. I think there is so much privilege attached to that assessment, and it's certainly not cheap, but it can be so important for people. And so I wanted to make sure my team were able to access something like that, especially for many of them having gone through the process with some or multiple children. They just found by the time it got to them, they couldn't afford it. So I wanted to make that possible. And I thought, oh, wow, Australian first. But as we've been making it in the media about this story, we've learned, wow, world first. There you go. I was a finalist in the Disabled Leader category for Women Changing the World. I'm a LinkedIn top voice for autistic leadership, and our company is about to be featured on a major TV show for our really neuroinclusive workplace. So I'm really proud. So I've said jokingly here, look, Dad, I made the news. But as we rolled out that policy, so many media outlets picked it up, and I've only got a couple of screenshots here for graphic design related reasons. But we've lost count of how many people have run this story, and I'm incredibly proud. I hope that it inspires other workplaces around the world to consider doing something similar. Really excitingly for me, we also got a shout out on my favorite podcast with one of my favorite autistic and ADHD women, Em Rusciano. She spoke at the press club. I can't actually remember what year, but it always left such an impact on my heart. It was so nice to see that representation, and by someone who just, wow, what an impact. So to overhear that she even shouted out to us about our recent policy change, I was really chuffed. So I guess neurodivergency, it's not just the buzzword. It's not a TikTok trend, and I've found, for the business landscape and where it's been and where it's heading, diversity of thought isn't just the buzzword. It's actually a really critical ingredient for success. I've looked at different settings in in completely different settings. And I've honestly found that the safest settings are the really diverse ones. I've pulled my children out of school settings and systems that lacked diversity completely. And to be really honest, when there's that lack of diversity, to me, it's a major red flag. I can see it when we walk through schools. The lack of diversity is often pretty obvious. We know what to look for as a family now. And so we seek out the school settings that look like the real world that we live in, and have that diversity really well represented and so on. And it's the same in the business world and the world that I'm in now as a working woman. I've also found that neurodivergent perspectives in our industry are just so needed. We are, I am so well designed for my role. My team are absolutely incredible. And each and every day, we are leaning into so many neurodivergent strengths with relation to the work that we do. And the best thing is, I know that usually with a strength comes what is a special interest. And then I know that I'm doing something for neurodivergent wellbeing for my team, because when you're doing something that's a special interest to you, it's usually a pretty good ingredient to with regards to wellbeing. So that value, I think I've spoken to it a little bit there, but we certainly, benefit daily from, like I said, leaning into these neurodivergent perspectives, but then really normalizing them across our online content with our clients. We normalize really neuroaffirming language. When a client says, I love how you did X, Y, and Z, we will name the neurodivergent strength that played a role in that thing that they love, just so we can start to really paint the picture of all of their favorite things being what are many of the neurodivergent strengths within my workplace. The thing about it, though, is I've talked a lot about strengths, but I'm also super respectful, and I really never want to romanticize disability. I love that we live in a world now where differentiation is key, but I don't like to romanticize disability. I never do it with my children. I've never used the word superpower, and each to their own, but for us, it's just, not a word that we use, because it sort of takes away from the areas that we find to be really challenging. And so whilst I'm really proud of all of the neurodivergent strengths that I have, there are pieces in my, neurodivergent life that feel vulnerable or truly disabled, and so on. So, I mean, I've shared, I have my own business, I manage people. And to be really honest, every Friday, I just have to become selectively mute with my family, my husband, because after an entire week of managing people and team, there is nothing left for me. And I just need one evening of just absolutely becoming selectively mute for my own personal, well-being, safety, and so on, and so, yeah, I don't romanticize disability, and instead just get really realistic about, all of this. In saying that, something that I'm really interested in, and I would love to explore with many of you is the disabled versus disabled theory. So within my pocket of the world, being a really proud neurodivergent woman, there are some things where I'm like, yes, there is disability, but at other times I find, is this, in this moment, am I feeling disabled, or am I feeling disabled by my environment? And that can apply to anything, like not just workplaces, school settings, and so on. But for me, even growing up, particular friendship groups I would find really disabling, in that I'm a very literal person. And if anyone has a problem with me, I need them to kind of spell it out, because I don't pick up on subtlety or honestly anything micro. I need someone to really spell it out. So growing up as an autistic girl, I would find in particular friendship groups that I was in, I was held to a neuronormative standard of friendship that I just couldn't pull off. They never seemed happy with me as a friend, and I found the experience of trying to be a friend to them and being held to neurotypical standards was really disabling. So in that instance, yes, I am a disabled woman, but I was also seriously disabled by that particular environment. These days, I have the kind of friends who are just so safe. I would wish that on every neurodivergent person who might be listening today or catching the replay. So I do ask the question a lot, like, in this moment, the challenge that I'm having, is this a challenge because of my disability, or am I disabled by the environment that I'm in at the moment? And what changes do I need to advocate for so that I don't feel disabled by my environment? So I wanted to walk through strengths and neurodivergent strengths within the workplace, and certainly cast a light on my workplace. I've generalized here, and it's certainly not it's a non-exhaustive list of neurodivergent strengths. I tried to break it down as easy as I possibly could between autism, ADHD, and then when they coexist as ADHD. I've looked at dyslexia, dyscalculia, but please know there's a whole neurodivergent umbrella, and it's in the interest of time, couldn't possibly include absolutely all, but I've listed those pieces as bullet points within each of these. And I love what I see here. So say, for example, attention to detail, the ability to deep focus and hyper focus. What I love most about my workplace and the team that I employ is just I'm surrounded by interest-led brains who just light up about some of the work that we get to work on. They are all in, and so am I. I'm all in on them, and then as a result, they seem to go all in on our work, which is incredible. We've got an incredible work ethic, super loyal. We are creative. We recognize patterns that other people don't. We are hyper empathic, and I'm so lucky to have empathy coursing through my workplace's veins. Our leadership team are some of the most empathic human beings. Our whole team are. We're non-hierarchical. I just really don't care about anyone's job titles. It's just a thing that you put on LinkedIn, to be really honest. I just want to collaborate with anyone, no matter who they are, and do great things with them. In the dyslexic space, so much innovation and big picture thinking, real business mindset. So whether you're entrepreneur, being that you launch your own business, or maybe you're just a really great business oriented human being within a workplace, which is that entrepreneurial aspect. storytelling, interpersonal skills, very visual thinkers, that pattern recognition, incredible problem solving skills, and so on. And then in the dyscalculic space, which is me. So dyscalculia is, a lot of people would describe it as being like dyslexia, but with numbers and maps and, instructions and things like that instead of the written word. But the strengths in that space, I just feel really lucky, So what I might lack in quickly figuring out whatever number minus whatever number is, I make up for in really holistic thinking. So a little activity that some of you might want to contribute to in the Zoom chat. I won't be able to open that up, but certainly you can read with each other and engage with the team as well. But a little activity here might be to just start thinking about and recognizing your particular strengths that might come with neurodivergency, if you are identifying as a neurodivergent person. So I want you to think about a time where you felt particularly successful or proud, competent in your personal or professional lives because of those neurodivergent strengths. So I'll give you a little moment to just type something out and just give it some thought. What would you say has been a time where you were just really aware that those strengths that you have played an incredible role in something that felt like success to you? I hope we're getting some good contributions. And to honor processing speed, please take your time with this. You certainly don't have to contribute to the chat right now. Sometimes people ask questions of me where I'm like, I want to go away and think about that. But I recommend doing it. I'm not sure if you can relate to this, but to be really honest, I've read recent statistics of neurodivergent people receiving somewhere between 20 to 40,000 different pieces of negative feedback by a particular age, somewhere in the teen years. And so I think the best way to overcome that is to focus on being really kind to yourself and sharing much better narratives about yourself to yourself. So I gave the example in that disabled versus disabled theory. I used to convince myself that I was a terrible friend, because the only feedback that I ever heard was, from probably pretty disabling friendship groups that I had as a kid, and so on, that told me that I was just not good enough. I wasn't good at picking up on cues that they were putting down and inviting myself to places with them or thinking to call them at all hours. Like I just had no desire to do that, So I used to grow up thinking I'm a really bad friend, These days I tell myself, and it's true, I think anyone is so lucky to have me as a friend. I am so loyal and loving and creative and empathic, my special interest is people. And if they're a friend to me, you can imagine the intensity. And so these days I tell myself much kinder narratives, like they are so lucky to have me as a friend and vice versa. Okay. So let's bring it to a different setting. Let's think about the school setting. And this is where I've got a lot of experience with this because I've tried to put my two children through mainstream school settings with some success and some really huge learning lessons as well. Where my daughter is now, for example, she's at the most neuroinclusive school in Victoria. I feel so lucky. And my son went through that school in his final 2.5 years, which we were super grateful for. But before that, we had a horrific experience in a very ableist, school setting. And we learned lots of lessons about that. And now we look for school settings and settings in general that normalize asking for accommodations. So when our kids started a new school, I love the schools that normalize what accommodations do you need in order to thrive, in this school setting. But I've started to look at that and think, why isn't that the norm in workplaces? We should absolutely normalize particular accommodations. So I've got a screenshot, which has been given to me from one of my team members. She's given her full consent for this to be used tonight, obviously name removed. But this is a list of accommodations from her formal assessment when she found out she was an autistic and ADHD woman. And you can see if you're reading through with me or after, tonight's presentation, the accommodations are so simple. And in fact, I actually look at a lot of these and think many of them are redundant to us because we, spoke to her and realized you would really suit fully remote. She asked for that and we were like, absolutely, go fully remote. And that's been incredible, so easy and just so incredible for her. Before she joined our company, she moved quite frequently between different roles. And she's been with us for 4 years and has had multiple promotions. She is thriving in our workplace. And I just wanted to share that story with her consent. She was very proud for me to share this story, actually, because and we'll go back to disabled versus disabled theory, when we considered how would our environment disable her from the success that she'd like to achieve as a working professional, it's just a list of very simple accommodations on this page and also the next. So we're really lucky. She gave us 2 pages of really detailed accommodations. This isn't the entire list, but it's just little screenshots of that. And I don't know that who wouldn't be able to enact all of these. They're completely simple, so accommodating for disability in the workplace should be just done without the bat of an eyelid. No one's asking for too much. And in fact, we've now enjoyed, 3+ close to 4 years with this human being, this incredible human being. She's had multiple promotions. She's got more on the horizon. She is growing. She's thriving. Our clients adore her. We do. We feel really lucky. So I guess when I think about typical accommodations, again, this isn't a full list, but I wanted to show you and remind you, it doesn't just start from hiring and bringing someone in to the workplace. We look at it from here. So when we're actually putting that job ad live, if that candidate is successful, when we're inducting them, and then of course, everything we're doing on a day-to-day basis to make sure that we not only retain them, but retain them well. So coming right through to hiring, when that job ad goes live, we make sure that our job ad descriptions are really inclusive. What I know to be true about neurodivergent people is that they will look at a job ad, and if they don't tick every single bullet point listed in there, they will think, I won't apply for this because I've missed out on 2 pieces of criteria. And I know this, in fact, it is me. And so what we do to conquer that is we write within the job ad, please don't apply for this if you tick every box, because if that's the case, you're overqualified for this role. And so we normalize growth and what that looks like. You shouldn't be able to tick every box, because what's the point of taking that job? You should go for the one above it. You're overqualified. And we end up getting so many more candidates just from that example of inclusion alone. We never ask for video applications, which is quite uncommon in our industry, given that we're in a creative and strategic industry. For whatever reason, a lot of people think that creativity and a strategy is attached to a video application for a job. And I just think, no, that's really excluding folks who just wouldn't feel comfortable, aren't able to, don't want to, just the plethora of different reasons as to why. And I don't want to exclude literally anyone. When someone applies for a job with us, we email them the full job description prior to interviewing with us. And we also give the interview questions well in advance to honor that processing speed. I am never interested in interviewing people and assessing their ability within a role based on how fast they can answer a question and how well they can do that at speed. I don't think that's a measure of suitability for a role. I think that our processing speed is important. We are human beings. We're not robots. We need time to think. And so we honor that by giving questions prior. And for anyone who doesn't have lived experience within the workplace, I would recommend getting your questions checked over by someone with the lived experience of, for the topic of this conversation tonight, neurodivergency. We're lucky, I do, so that's me. We normalize accommodations before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. So we just say, is there anything you need from us before the interview? At the beginning of the interview, we ask if there's anything you need from us throughout this interview, just let us know. And then afterwards as well. We have virtual interviews, and while the interview is going ahead, like while it's actually live, we type out the questions in a chat box throughout the entirety of the interview. And the reason why we do that is we have found, especially our ADHD employees, really benefit from, in their exact words, staying on track with the questions. Sometimes they can they'll be answering a question, and you know that feeling when it just sometimes gets away from you, and it's just really beneficial for them to have it right there in the chat box. We honor processing speed, and even at the end of the interview, we actually say, are there any questions you would like to redo? Sometimes when you answer a question, you just think, throughout the interview, you think, I could have done better than that. And so we give them the opportunity to redo that, and we literally delete their answer if they choose to go for the redo, and we just retype out a new answer. We more than welcome camera off, so welcome. That's just some examples. I couldn't list them all. Then you move over to induction. Again, normalizing, any accommodations. So they've just joined our company. We normalize the accommodations. If they've, obviously told us that they are neurodivergent in their interview with us, we never out them to team until they share and disclose themselves. And the reason why is there are a lot of workplaces that neurodivergent folk describe as not being safe to disclose their neurodivergency. We honor that, we respect that, but we try very much to make sure that anyone knows that they're safe to disclose at our workplace. We obviously on board with a really neurodivergent friendly welcoming pack, right down to like noise cancelling headphones as the welcome gift. We welcome anyone to our company with a neurodivergent friendly welcome pack, and we just honestly assume neurodivergency, to be honest. Even if they're not, we know that neurotypical brains really benefit from, neurodivergent or neuroinclusive settings. So we just design for neurodivergency, knowing that neurotypical brains would benefit and neurodivergent brains thrive. On the flip side, a workplace or a setting that's designed for neurotypical brains, yes, the neurotypicals will thrive, but neurodivergent brains can genuinely feel traumatized in that setting. So the most inclusive, if I've got a choice, I'm going to design for neurodivergency first. Beyond that, we do big explorations with our team members down to and about me. We do formalized, assessments on learning styles, communication styles, feedback preferences, comms preferences, and so on. And we profile that and make sure that every manager is so aware of, who's on their team, what their preferences are, and how we can honor that. So it's, I hope you're feeling that it's really inclusive. And then, of course, retention. Much of what I've mentioned before, we make sure that right from the top, the inclusivity is there within senior leadership, middle management. I feel silly saying that for a team of 17, but it does exist in our workplace. Obviously, you can tell I don't love hierarchy. We're just one big, great team. But the inclusive leadership, education, and so on is, felt across the board. We even do, some people describe it as fairly progressive, but we design work schedules around circadian rhythms. So we know neurodivergent folk might have really different circadian rhythms where it's no ability or no desire to fall asleep before 3 o'clock in the morning. So a 9 a.m. start is just not going to work for that person. And a couple of slides back when I shared that sample list of accommodations, that was from one particular employee whose circadian rhythm is a 3 a.m. to bed kind of person. And the reason why she was rolling between different jobs before joining us is she just couldn't pull off the 9 a.m. start long term. So she actually starts her workday with us somewhere around 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. It really benefits her. That's most important, but our clients really benefit too. It's just so easy. So why force someone to do the 9 a.m. start if your workplace doesn't need it? And, you know, we're really lucky in the industry that we are, where we can design around circadian rhythm. Absolutely. From there, we make sure that reviews, like catch-ups with managers, yearly reviews, I never want that to be that piece that I guess performance managers for very typical neurodivergent traits. That certainly happened to me before I launched my own company, and I never want to see that happen again, you know. So you'll never see what is a very typical neurodivergent trait ever being managed in a yearly review, and especially weekly one-to-ones with managers and so on. That's not inclusive. So I've really learned through my experience as an autistic woman on the importance of really radically understanding yourself as a neurodivergent person. I've stopped waiting, honestly, for the world to understand me. I mean, it would be idealistic to think that there would be global, you know, understanding and all of that radical acceptance. That's incredible. I hope that we keep forging towards that. But I'm pretty realistic. And so what I've landed on is the best thing I can do is radically understand myself. I don't want to wait for other people to. I think the best thing I can do is radically understand myself and therefore be able to seriously self-advocate. And that's put me in good stead. You know, it's, you know, a comfortable position to be in. Just want to issue a content warning here. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk about disability discrimination within the workplace and associated ableism. If that's in any way triggering for you, I would recommend just dipping from this particular part of the presentation, because the next slide I will be discussing disability discrimination in the workplace. So I just wanted to talk through that. I always thought one of the best things about business ownership is the privilege associated with the fact that I guess I'm my own boss, you know. And so I thought that I would be pretty safe in terms of disability discrimination. I couldn't imagine a lot of people would probably heavily discriminate the CEO of the company that they work for, just for, you know, fairly, like in my mind, fairly logical reasons. But that actually, unfortunately, isn't true. And this situation opened my eyes to, yeah, just how prevalent disability discrimination is. Because if I'm the CEO of my own company, employing a team of humans, and I did encounter really severe disability discrimination from a person that I hired into my workplace and obviously is no longer, you know, at our company, that was that moment where I realized, gosh, if that happens to me, like, that's a lot to think about, you know. I think about my children in one-day workplaces and so on. And so I just wanted to mention that, like, I haven't avoided discrimination within my own workplace. You know, that particular sort of scenario that I'm talking about was, you know, from someone who just, yeah, really not inclusive. You know, what would I say, sort of writing written warnings for people opening their laptops during meetings because they're, and I say this in inverted commas, they're not paying attention. I just thought, oh gosh, attention styles look different on everyone. I won't go through a full list of things, but it was pretty full on, to be really honest. For obvious reasons, that person didn't work out in my workplace. I really did try to make it work. I thought I could get there with just spending a lot of time with that person, educating on neurodivergency and, you know, neuroinclusivity. But at the end of that sort of situation, they decided I'm not interested. And so I was like, okay, good luck in your career, but this is not the workplace for you. So I guess coming back to the importance of radically understanding self, if you understand self, everything else follows. And that has been one of the most powerful lessons I've learned. And I'm now teaching my children the same thing. I'm like, please don't wait for people to save you. Please don't wait for people to radically understand you. I don't want you to wait for teachers to have this full understanding and awareness of, you know, neuroinclusivity within the school setting. It's unfortunately, realistically, just not always going to happen. And so I really try to teach our children to instead very much so radically understand self so that they can passionately, you know, yeah, advocate for self. So I use different tools at our work, which I'll go through fairly quickly just in the interest of time. But I only ever use assessment tools in our workplace from a HR perspective that are neuroinclusive. I find that some things aren't as much. I especially don't love disc profiling, to be really honest. I think those questions are really confusing for neurodivergent brains. I'm very literal, so I've found trying to answer the questions on disc profiling to be seriously confusing. And I just always wonder about the results. Sometimes they don't feel completely accurate. But what I landed on was just instead leaning on sort of assessment pieces that are very safe. One of those has been the LSI. So it's a really great wheel. You can fill out a series of questions and find out sort of where you sit. And it just helps you grow. I like to always try to become the best version of myself. And so I'm always trying to get to the most positive place in this wheel, which usually just means you're a really safe human being, leader, and so on. When you can sort of score fairly highly, it's not that scoring doesn't matter, but you know what I mean? Like when you sort of show up high here, it usually means that you're a safe, constructive person. I mentioned before, but we do format assessments for all of our team who join my company as well. And that helps us understand their learning style, communication preferences, feedback preferences, and so on. We honestly have seriously productive meetings because of all of the information that we know to be true about the format assessment and so on. And then, throughout the induction process, as I mentioned, we run through an About Me book as well, and we have each person fill out little questions about themselves that helps their manager, us, their, colleagues, peers, and so on, sort of understand them better. And the sort of sample questions, I know it's a big list here, and you can certainly come back to this after today/tonight. But it just really helps people sort of feel understood in the workplace. I especially love the questions like things that people might misunderstand about me that I need to clarify are ... Like that's such a great way for colleagues to better understand each other, managers to understand folks who directly report through to them and so on. So we have a really good experience with this book, and it's been such a positive experience for our company. So after today, I wanted to ask you, I won't ask you to do this just in the interest of time, but a little activity to do after today is to really think about answering those questions yourself, so how you feel, maybe misunderstood in a workplace, or for those here from different settings, it might be school setting, and so on. Because when I look at this About Me book, I have honestly designed something similar for my children to give to teachers within the school setting. Okay. As I finish off tonight, I just wanted to finish off with some great stories that really showcase that neurodivergent thinking. And I really do believe these days that the gift of neurodivergent thinking for me has equaled some of the best moments I've had as CEO in this business. I'm a solutions-oriented human, and I get to sort of share in some of the best stories off the back of that, one of those being during lockdown. Obviously, we couldn't enter our offices because we're based in Melbourne/Naarm. So definitely locked out of our offices. And I just hated the waste. I just thought all of this office space and none of us in there to utilize it. So we opened our offices to those experiencing homelessness. My son offered his mattress. He gave up his Minecraft bedding. I don't know if anyone understands, folks who've got a special interest in Minecraft, but that is a big deal. And the person who actually slept on that particular bed in that particular room within our offices is now our content creator. He designed these slides that I've been presenting from this evening. He's been with us for 3 years. He's been promoted twice, and he's one of the most incredible human beings that I've met, in my time as CEO. So I really love the way that neurodivergent thinking sort of gets you to that spot. So this is him. His name is Dane. He's a really proud trans man. He's our content specialist. He started as content marketing manager. He's had multiple promotions. He's a dyslexic, just the most incredible dyslexic thinker. And we're so lucky, to have him in our company. I'm just conscious of time, so I probably won't go through the next story as much. But again, just money in good hands is a good thing, and that's something our company is big on. So we did rent an apartment at one point throughout TDP's history, and then we gave that to a not-for-profit that helps people escape family violence. And this was de-identified, and this person would love me to share this story, but she gave us the video of the day that she moved in because she wanted Australia to better understand what family violence is like within Australia. The video went viral, and 3 companies, huge companies, donated 91 apartments to the same not-for-profit. So that's pretty special, and it was a life-changing moment for me. So this is where I am, 6 days a month. We don't really love hanging out in the offices too much, to be honest. So we're there 6 days a month, but we make it matter when they're there, and it's a meaningful experience. This is my incredible team. Our clients affectionately call us the nicest place on the internet, which was a joking kind of tagline, but we ended up taking it because it was just too adorable not to. So to finish off, I think businesses genuinely have a choice when taking on neurodivergent folk within your workplace. I can't stand this. Can't they just ... And I say, no, can't we just? Because as you've heard from me tonight, the can't we just is so simple and so powerful, and the best decisions I've ever made. It is so easy to include. It is so difficult to exclude. It's actually more work and a lot more energy to exclude human beings, and it's just so easy to include. So that's what I'd like to leave you on tonight, but I'll certainly open up to questions now. And thank you for your time. This is where you can find us on social if you're interested. But otherwise, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Cherie. I also just wanted to say, like, as a fellow autistic person, like, everything you shared is just really powerful, incredible, and we need more workplaces like you. And just, I'm really excited to see, the incredible impact you're making in this field. And yeah, it's just really awesome.
Thank you.
I also have a couple questions. So we're going to have the question answer now. I encourage everyone to put any questions you have in the chat for Cherie. But I know you were talking about radically accepting yourself as a neurodivergent person. But how did you become confident in being authentically yourself and disclosing your disability in the workplace or in your own business?
Yeah, sure. I think I'd have to first acknowledge the privilege that I have. Like, I just couldn't not acknowledge that. So when I own my own business, I understand that there's just so much privilege associated with that. And so I really meant what I said in that disclosure piece. In this country, it is not always safe to disclose. I know the stats on disclosure in interviews and potentially not progressing through to and so on. Anyone could probably, definitely Google those stats. I know we don't contribute to those stats. I can't stand the stats of unemployment or underemployment. So folks going for roles that they're far too qualified to be going for and so on. So look, to answer that question, it's pretty difficult because I've just got too much privilege now to probably answer it like fairly. I'm so lucky. The confidence for me came from the fact that I own my own business. Before that, I can honestly say I had some pretty tough experience in fairly neuronormative workplaces that didn't feel safe for me to disclose my autistic, culture and identity in. And then other places less so. So I could, yeah.
Thank you so much. No, that's very valid, and I really, hear you. The next question I have is, what advice would you give to other young people with disability who aspire to have their own business, but maybe aren't sure where to start?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I think one of my favorite things about neurodivergent brains is our special interests often guide where we end up as business owners. It's that thing that you can't stop doing no matter how hard you try. For me, it's always been content, like I said, as a young kid, to see life in content. I always felt like when people would see green as a color, I was like, what? No, there's 200 shades of, and I just couldn't believe that people couldn't see the same things that I was seeing. So I think to answer your question, follow what is a special interest. Follow the thing that you could hyper focus on and stay well. For me, that hyper focus attached to a special interest is peak autistic well-being for me. Other people would describe it as hustle or burnout and so on, but I'm sorry, when I'm well, it's when I'm working feverishly on something that's a special interest to me. It just doesn't feel like hustle. Hustle for me is probably doing something like reconciling something in Zero, like reconcile like bookkeeping and just things that don't light me up inside. So follow your special interest and the things that you hyper focus on well. And then the only final thing I would say is just be aware. The interesting thing, I'm not sure who can relate to this. The thing about special interests is sometimes like a shooting star, they can fade out and you move on to a new one. So just keep in mind that neurodivergent business ownership sometimes looks like multiple different businesses within your lifetime, because like a shooting star that fades out, you decide, so far it hasn't happened for me within 10 years, but if digital marketing stopped being a special interest for me, I don't know if I could honestly rock up to work each day. So yeah, I'm always hyper conscious of the fact that businesses can change. And I've seen that with my autistic best friend, who's been everything from a wedding photographer to an SEO specialist. And I love watching her do her special interest thing.
That's a great answer, and I can relate so much about the special interest stuff. So yeah, that's great advice. The next question I have is, what tips do you have for affecting change in stagnant workplaces with deeply entrenched neuronormativity?
Gosh, I've been in those workplaces. Um, Tips, keep yourself safe, focus on yourself first. You are, by the description of that question, not actually in a safe workplace. So please look after yourself first and foremost and really focus on what well-being will look like to you in a setting that actually isn't designed well for you currently. And then to probably try to be more optimistic, I would definitely want to prioritize getting someone with lived experience as a consultant into that workplace, to at least bare minimum talk to leadership about neuroinclusive workplaces, but they would need to be open to that. And sometimes that's realistically just not something that highly neuronormative workplaces are about. It's that unfortunate circumstance where that setting suits a particular group of people who might not be interested in changing it because it suits them. But yeah, the definition of privilege, I guess, is not being upset about something that doesn't impact you. And we've got to go bigger than that and consider everyone. So I would start with lived experience, coming in and consulting, bare minimum. And then maybe, depending on, and I'm certainly not a career advisor, but just ask yourself how happy you are in that particular role. And, we're not in that lifetime where we were doing 20-year stints in one role anymore, like our grandparents. So I am open to change. In fact, keeping in mind, to be really honest, I'm that autistic woman who doesn't love change. So it's usually a big decision for me to actually think about moving on. Yeah, I hope that's a good answer to that question.
I think that's a great answer. And where do we start in a workplace where we aren't the decision makers to implement change via policies and procedures, etc., apart from showing up, disclosing, and leading by example, etc.?
That's yeah, it's such a great question. I mean, I was just going to say from, what's listed, so showing up, disclosing, leading by example. I don't know what more a workplace could want from an incredible lived experience human within their workplace, advocate, ally, and so on. So how to, I guess, impact leadership. I'm not sure how much can you normalize conversations around inclusivity? Is it a Slack channel that gets started up? Like, I don't know how each workplace is designed, but just having those conversations and again, bringing folks in, even like sessions like tonight, how important this is to be representing in this way and normalize the conversations that we have. you know, and so on. It's just so important, you know. So I would recommend some sort of, you know, commitment, asking for some sort of commitment to bring those folks in so that we can expand our minds. We only get one life. Wouldn't you want it to be, you know, the most inclusive one it can possibly be, include all, and so on. So that's my hope for workplaces. But yeah, look, I'm careful to not answer in a utopian state kind of way, because I am so acutely aware of how unsafe so many workplaces are out there, unfortunately. But I'm seeing changes. I really am. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Cherie. You had so much insight, and yeah, your answers were really great. So we're going to wrap up today now. Absolutely love listening to you speak. Thank you so much as well to all the attendees for being here, for all the questions you asked, and for supporting the network.